Good morning, Europe. It's Monday, the 23rd of May. I'm Ralsan, and it's great to have you with us. Let's take a look at our top stories.
Russia continues to bomb eastern Ukraine around Severodonetsk and Lugansk, where Moscow continues to gain ground.
The World Economic Forum 2022 is on, and at the top of the Davos agenda is the war in Ukraine, with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky delivering a keynote speech on Monday.
And Belgium imposes a 21-day mandatory quarantine for those infected with monkeypox as the number of confirmed cases rise in Europe. Russia continued to bomb eastern Ukraine on Sunday. Their goal was to capture Severodonetsk and Lugansk. According to the Institute for the Study of War, Russian forces have gained ground in the area and intensified their efforts to seize the city. In an attempt to block the enemy troops from advancing, Ukrainian soldiers destroyed the bridge over the Donets River. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke about the toll the war is taking on the country.
Today, up to 100 people may die in the east of our state. They are defending our country and our independence, which everyone in the world is talking about. Everyone says so, but we personally feel it very much.
The cost of the war can be felt in places like Saltivka, once a densely populated residential neighborhood in Kharkiv. Although Ukrainian forces managed to push back the Russian offensive, the city officials say that about a third of the buildings will have to be destroyed due to their unsafe conditions. Those who remain find themselves with no access to gas, water, and a majority have no electricity. However, they are forced to adapt to their new reality. And in Mariupol, home to the Azov-style steel works, the charred carcasses of the buildings are all that remain of the once vibrant port city. Among the debris, the locals try to survive as Russian soldiers patrol the streets, now under their control.
Pride for Russia, anxiety, fear and horror. Those are Russians' dominant feelings about military actions in Ukraine, according to a poll by the independent pollster Levada Center, labeled a foreign agent in Russia. Levada's recent polls also show that support for Vladimir Putin's decision is still high. It decreased just a little compared to March, and that the majority believes it is NATO responsible for the destruction and deaths of civilians. It is important to mention that for most, television is still the main source of information, and that Russian TV is fully and totally controlled by the state. Facebook and Instagram are blocked and independent media are closed. Those who protest against the war are being detained. Most independent journalists as well as human rights activists left Russia for security reasons, and many regular people, those who disagree and disapprove, dare to say what they think only behind their closed kitchen doors, as it was back in the Soviet times. Galina Polonskaya, Euronews from Paris.
Alina and Christina have spent the better part of the past 3 months underground.
I wake up and brush my teeth, then I have breakfast, then I sit down for lessons. After school I have a little rest, and then I have lunch. After that we play on the street. When the siren starts or the bombing starts, we play in the basement. The moment they bomb, Mum comes down, Dad stays up there. But when it's heavy bombardment, Dad comes down too. At this moment, I just want to not be bombed.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine has had a devastating impact on all aspects of life here. And as it's the case with other armed conflicts, children have been hit particularly hard.
I mean, I don't think that there is a single child in Ukraine who hasn't been touched in some way or another by this conflict. You know, in the most severe cases, children who have been exposed directly to the violence, to weeks of bombing, living underground in shelters, you know, this can bring on post-traumatic stress disorder.
Mass displacement has left children exposed to human trafficking and sexual exploitation, while the conflict itself puts millions at risk of being maimed or worse. Since the start of the war, over 200 children have lost their lives.
You don't need science to kind of ask, are children going to be harmed by this? So
Dr. Jack Shonkov from the Center on the Developing Child at Harvard University told Euronews children will bear the scars of this conflict one way or another, well into their adult years.
What's going on inside the body when the stress system is activated? Stress hormone levels increase in our bloodstream. Our heart rate goes up, our blood pressure goes up. Our immune system is activated, so inflammation is elevated inside the body. Our blood sugar levels are going up, bringing energy to our brain to think more clearly and to our muscles to fight or run. And all of those systems, if they don't come back to baseline, then start to have a wear and tear effect on parts of the brain, which can affect your behavior, your mental status, and your mental health. But they can also affect your cardiovascular system and your immune system and your metabolic systems in a wear and tear effects. So yes, mental health problems are immensely important, but so will physical health problems be. But they will appear later.
Later, in the future, which is something people here are struggling to picture for now.
1 minute.
I don't know. What can I plan today? They can bomb us. There is no point in guessing the future. A rocket comes and we cease to exist. I don't see the point in talking about the future. We live by the day.
Annalise Borges in Mykolaiv, southern Ukraine, for Euronews.
Just look at the camera, just like that.
This year's World Economic Forum kicks off on Monday in the Swiss Alpine resort of Davos. Amidst enhanced security, some of the most powerful and influential leaders on the planet will be talking about soaring prices, the war in Ukraine, drought, food shortages and the pandemic. And just in case they're tempted to forget, the climate protesters are out in force to remind them of what many see as still the biggest challenge facing humanity. The demonstrators accused world leaders of putting profits over people.
I think there are a lot of things that changed, but in the end the big steps were not made yet, and we need big steps that we actually tackle the climate crisis. And I see that there is a shift in values slowly, and that people talk about it more, and it's more important, it's more on the agenda.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is due to address the delegates by video link on Monday. Normally Russian leaders would be there, but this year Russia House has been renamed Russia War Crimes House. It will host an exhibition highlighting alleged crimes and cruelties.
The World Economic Forum 2022 is on, and this time Davos exceptionally is taking place in May, and you can see the view right here behind me, which is so different from the usual snowy mountains Davos. The forum has been postponed for a while because of the pandemic, and now when the world decision makers, business leaders, when they're coming here for the week of meetings, they will be discussing the COVID-19 pandemic and how to deal with it. They will be talking about the climate change, which is such an important issue here in Davos. But at the top of the agenda is the war in Ukraine. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is addressing Davos on Monday. He's the first keynote speaker here. We're going to also hear from Spain's Pedro Sanchez, from the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. And we're going to be looking forward to hearing what the politicians, the decision makers and business leaders have to say on how they can deal with the far-reaching consequences of the war in Ukraine for the world. Sasha Vakulina, Euronews, Davos.